How to Make People Like You in 90 Seconds or Less by Nicholas Boothman. Chapter 3. Moving Beyond Introductions. Okay, so let's say you've nailed the introduction. You're feeling confident and the first impression has gone well. Now what? Many people start to get nervous at this point because they struggle to think of conversation topics or worry that they'll say the wrong thing. And that's why this chapter is going to focus on the technique of establishing a good rapport. Rapport is defined as a close and harmonious relationship in which the people or groups concerned understand each other's feelings or ideas and communicate well. And that's exactly what you want when connecting with others, right? So, how do you cultivate that? A natural rapport usually develops when you have something in common with another person. For example, let's say you meet someone new and discover that you have a mutual friend or are members at the same gym. This will give you an instant point of connection and enable you to talk freely about your shared interests. Even if you two ultimately have very little in common, you'll feel like you do. And this will facilitate a sense of kinship and pleasurable communication. But what do you do in situations where you don't have that instant in with another person? In these cases, there are other ways to build a good rapport, and they all start with your attitude. Although you might think the success of the conversation is determined by your shared interests or the other person's response, the truth is that the attitude with which you approach the conversation is actually the biggest deal breaker of them all. The author describes the differences between these attitudes as being useful and useless. So let's take a look at the characteristics of each type. As you've probably already imagined, a useful attitude is the one you want to cultivate because it's a positive starting point. The key difference is that a useful attitude is characterized by your assessment of what you want out of the conversation. In other words, it's when you start the conversation by thinking, I want to get to know this person, or I want to make a positive impression on this person so they can help me with my customer service issue. By contrast, a useless attitude concentrates on the aspect of the scenario that you don't want. If, for example, someone gets your order wrong at McDonald's and you angrily demand to speak to the manager, you're not really thinking about how the manager feels or about anything positive that can come from the conversation. Rather, you're thinking about how angry you are that your order is wrong and how you don't want it to be wrong. And if you've ever tried this approach to interacting with someone, you already know that it's usually not very effective. In this respect, your attitude really is useless because it's unlikely to accomplish anything constructive. Instead, the most likely outcome is that you're going to yell at the manager. The manager will either respond angrily or feel hurt and attacked, and you probably won't get what you want anyway. Instead of getting your order refunded or your items replaced, it's more likely that you'll walk away empty-handed, knowing that you've needlessly ruined an innocent person's day. So, what alternative course of action can you take? And what can you do when the other person really does deserve to be yelled at? Well, obviously, even if someone deserves it, being unkind and confrontational isn't the best course of action. So no matter how justified your anger is, try to approach each interaction with a useful attitude. Even in moments of conflict, you can adjust your attitude by thinking about what you want from the conversation. So, for example, in the case of the McDonald's snafu, you can transition from thinking, I don't want my order to be wrong, to, I want someone to help me make it right. This will enable you to adjust your perspective and speak calmly and kindly to someone who can help. After all, we all know that people are more likely to help you if you're nice to them. So just try the nice approach instead. You can also use the body language tips we've discussed in the previous chapters to help.